set up a computer for you. Oh, you need a new monitor. We're going to get you top of the range gaming monitor. Oh, you really want that? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we'll bill you for that too. You need our internet services? Awesome. Yeah, we'll just tack that on, put that through later. And once we got to the end, okay, here's your bill. No. I never agreed to that. What do you mean I have to pay extra for a computer monitor? And like, we're talking days of work, thousands of dollars of hardware. We couldn't afford to just be out of pocket. She was fighting with us by email constantly. There was some very strange requests, like to my business partner. He kept getting asked for him to bring his silent partner to her house to discuss. And I was like, that's weird. 1, I'm not a silent partner. 2, what is she talking about? 3, I'm not going to this lady's house. That's insane.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Push Podcast. This is the podcast where we explore the real stories behind what makes entrepreneurs and business owners the successes they are today. I am Jack Ferguson, a small business growth strategist, and I will be your host. I believe the best way to learn and be inspired is to listen to the experiences and stories of those you respect. Their real experiences, their real story, warts and all. Honest storytelling is what this is all about. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast, and don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you are listening to this. Hello and thanks for tuning in to episode 10 in season 2. Today's guest is Nathan Smith, co-founder of Switchnode. Switchnode is an established telecommunications service provider based in Brisbane. They started their business to address terrible internet offerings under the NBN and have since become specialists in providing phone and internet services to local business. In an industry that is renowned for treating its clients poorly, Switchnode have a focus on quality customer service and reliability. And as you got a taste from the story at the start of this podcast, Nathan is incredibly open about his journey so far. It is the purpose of this podcast to be honest and share real anecdotes around what happened during one's business journey, and this episode does not disappoint. We talk about the 3-year rule, getting attacked by another company early on in Nathan's journey, crazy clients like the one you heard about at the start of the episode, what he would do differently if he had his time again, being held to ransom by a supplier, a pivot into the elevator market that didn't quite go to plan, why performing to 1,000 people can be easier than speaking to one, and what it's like to pitch to a high-profile investor and get roasted. A great entrepreneur who shares so much. Let's meet Nathan. Nathan, so good to have you on the podcast today. How are you doing?
Jack, an absolute delight. I have to say, a little bit trepidatious. I feel like I'm on the wrong side of the podcast. This is my first time in the hot seat. I'm usually the griller, not the grillee.
So Switchnode, how long has that been around for?
Oh, about 3.5 years at this point.
3.5.
Yeah,
okay.
we've survived the worst of the storm, I'm told.
Right. Who told you that?
Every single person who has an opinion on startups and small business.
Okay.
The arbitrary 3-year rule. If you're not dead, you're good.
In 3 years?
Yes, that's what they say.
Okay, I thought it was 2.
Well, you're obviously a harsher critic than most of the others out there. I'd say Steve Baxter might be even a little more generous than you, and that's
okay.
that's
saying
difficult difficult bar.
Sure. Okay, so 3 years, 3.5 years going. Take us back to when you started and what stands out as one of the hardest things that you had to do at the start.
Oh, I think the hardest thing is, it won't sound this way, but you're so filled with optimism and hope. You're bringing something to this market that they've never seen before, and they are going to bend over backwards to make the most of this gift that you're giving to them. Such good service, such a good product, such a good price. And when you reach out to them, they just don't want a bar of it.
Mm.
I think that's probably the hardest thing. And you sit there going, no, I want to help you. I'm working really hard for you. And they just don't want to hear it.
So this is potential clients early on in the process, I assume. Yeah.
Who are you? What do you want?
Did they even say that, or they just ignored you?
Oh, not to my face.
Okay.
I think everyone has this real trend of projecting optimism when you meet them. And that's something you learn to be mindful of when you're running your own small business, because you'll tell someone what you're doing and their human instinct is to be really good and helpful. They'll say, oh, that's so great. Oh, I know people. I'm going to put your name out there. I'm really going to help you out. And you know what? Everyone means it in the moment. Everyone means it in the moment.
Yes.
But humans don't work that way. So hang on to your optimism, but maybe don't spend it all at once.
Right, and don't expect people to follow through on what they say at a party when they're 3 beers deep. And
welcome to being a grown-up.
Yeah, right. Okay, so your expectation going into it was you'll reach out to all these people with your services, small businesses in the area. Did you have a target market at the time when you started?
Yeah, well, when we first started, it actually came about my business partner and I were planning on taking his sheet metal fabrication skills to the next level, and growing something around that. And his parents had internet that didn't work, and they were actually ready to cut off from the grid and not even have Netflix. Like, can you imagine that? That's insanity. And so he screwed around. He found that there was this fixed wireless internet technology that he could run their home internet off just the mobile phone network. And he did it, and it was spectacular. And we tried a lot of different tech, and we said, oh, wow, we've got to build a business out of this. Like, he was based at Redland City. The NBN there was particularly woeful, even by NBN standards, 3.5 years ago. And we said, well, they're all being sold products that basically don't work. We can come in and fix that. And you don't have to be a tech expert. As an example, my parents lived there and they were getting 1.5 megabits a second down. And when we fixed it up, they were getting closer to 70. You don't have to understand what all those words mean to know that 1.5 to 70 is a really big jump. And you know what? They could watch Netflix. They could download things on their computer. And suddenly their life worked as though it was the 21st century. And we thought, oh, consumers are going to love this. But unfortunately, no. When you say it's going to be an extra $5 a month, that's the really deciding factor for people.
Wow. And so you did it first with your business partner's parents and then your parents. Is that right? Is that the first two people you signed up?
Oh, my parents would have been pretty close to the top.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And
good to have some support from the folks.
Yeah, of course. And then you have all this optimism, as you said, and then you're expecting we're going to go out and it's going to be easy to get more clients.
And admittedly, the first thing you do is you exploit the networks that you have. Your friends of the family, the people who you know well and you know need it, those are the ones you go out to, and you score some quick wins. You get some runs on the board and you're filled with this optimism. But it's very hard to put things in context and say, this isn't a standard marketing strategy. I'm not reaching out to random people, which is how this business is going to work. I can't set my expectations around what this was. Suffice it to say, we set our expectations around exactly that.
Right.
It was good to have a start, but
of course. So tell me what happened when the penny's starting to drop, that this isn't going to be as easy to acquire new clients as you thought.
Yeah, we were in a little bit of a challenging situation. I mean, everyone's in challenging situations when they start a business, but I was still working full time, and my business partner, he committed to basically stopping his work as a metal fabricator and going full time working for Switchnode. Very brave. Very gutsy thing to do, and he dived in. What I learned, it all comes down to human psychology. When you're in that situation, you will do the things that you know well. You're going to reach out to your own strengths. That doesn't mean you're going to instinctively take all the steps that your business needs. You might be pouring in tons of hours, but are you pouring them into the right place? And I can't blame him for a second for doing that, because, I wasn't there picking up on it, steering him the right direction, being a good business partner. I was the same. I saw this sort of arbitrary work and filled with optimism. It'll all just work out for the best. It's all just going to happen. So he said, oh, you know what? I need to, since everything's based out of my home, we're going to do up my shed. That's going to be all the storage space for Switchnode. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you're right. We need to like have our infrastructure in place for our storage of our stuff that we're going to sell. And before you know it, all this time goes by. And you know what? We haven't been investing in sales strategies. We haven't, and you know, like work was done at the same time. I shouldn't, all of these things are subjective. Like there was sales happening. We were exploiting the networks that we had. We were testing our technology and all the stuff that has to happen. Whether you have like an insanely good business coach or you're like us who we knew some stuff quite well. I've got a business background. You know, he's got a his own background as a fabricator, and there was like some real skills that were involved. We weren't just like graduated from high school, let's go. Even then, you've got to throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. So we were doing that, but we could have invested our time a lot more wisely. And particularly when it's like our savings that went in to bootstrap this business. Yeah, time really meant money.
Yeah. So tell me when it dawned though, when it was, okay, this isn't going to be as easy as we thought.
Oh, there were multiple occasions when the bank account got too low.
Right.
There were multiple occasions when we both got really stressed out and couldn't cope with what we were doing. When we hadn't built the right infrastructure and we hadn't maybe even built the right culture. And you don't think about a business having culture when it's one FTE and then some other guy who owns half of it who like does some work on the weekends and you know, whenever he possibly can. But there is one. There's, you know, you have to decide to have a culture of, I'm not going to get stressed out by the small things. I'm going to like decide what's a problem and what isn't and not be reactive. And it's easy to say that, but what that actually means when you put it on paper and in the context of your own business is really, really tough. You know, there was multiple times we've had these hard conversations about, okay, we have to close this business down. It's over. Fortunately for us, we got to the end of those conversations and always ended up planning out what we were going to do next because we just had felt that we were sitting on something that had too much opportunity. And it's tough to do things what feels like alone. Even when it's two people, you go out and you mingle with other businesses and they only tell you what's going really well.
Yeah.
You get on podcasts and they're like, oh yeah, it was just so easy. And you know, over the period of the 4 years, we grew 7,000%. And you go, oh yeah, I'll just do that same thing. I'm sure that'll be fine.
Yeah. Right. So once you did exhaust that initial network, how did you get more clients? Like was that, I can imagine that would have been a slog if you're expecting that to be easy.
Yeah, very difficult. We had some helping hands along the way. We have had great clients who have seen value in our product and you know had word of mouth referrals. That's very, very, very hard to lean on when you're small. And we still are small, but we notice that as we grow, the rate of that increases as we do our job better and as we have more support. And sometimes things just come out of the woodwork after years and years. We joined one of those little business groups that you go to week and everyone refers each other and you have little sheets of paper that you hand around at the meeting. But when we were starting off and, you know, we were tiny and we'd take every opportunity that we could, someone was like, oh, I need a new computer. We'd be like, yeah, close enough. We'll do that for you. Whatever you like. We'll bend over backwards for $1. It's fine. You know, we made the most of those and, you know, got good business referrals out of that. It's nothing to shy away from, particularly when you're small and you're starting and you need to start making a name for yourself. You might as well make it somewhere.
Are you talking about those groups that
just those little those little, they're almost like friendship groups, aren't they?
Oh, I don't know if I've been in one, but
you should join.
Yeah. They're not those forced referral things though, are they?
There's encouragement for each person in the group to refer other businesses that they're working with. And they'll get on Facebook and put in a good word for each other.
Okay,
and,
that's all right.
And get an award when they,
Right.
when they share the most. They're really nice.
But is it an expectation that you have to?
Yeah, everyone's there to help each other out.
But do you have a quota of how many referrals
I don't think there's
you
a
have to
quota.
do?
No.
There's some that do it like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which I think's pretty shitty.
I feel like that'd be a bit of work. You're trying to build your own business
Yes,
from the ground
exactly.
up, and they've said, "Hang on,
Yeah.
you've got KPIs to
Yes.
meet, my friend."
With leads that you deliver to other businesses.
you need to be helping them grow.
Yeah, so it's not like that.
No,
Yeah.
it's not like that.
Okay, cool. I've got a problem with them, obviously, so that's it's good to hear.
No, but look, you've got to use every tool in your toolbox, don't you?
Yeah. But early on as well, I understand you got, let's say, attacked by a IT company.
Oh, we had a really rough experience. And let me just start with the lesson learned. When your gut really says there's something wrong here, it doesn't matter if your business partner is excited and over the moon. It doesn't matter if you're talking about what the opportunity will look like for you, how great it's going to be for you. If your gut says this is a problem, like, listen to your gut. You have to listen to your gut. To keep a very long story short, we were approached by a very small IT company, asked to talk to us and said, look, we do IT for people and businesses. We see that they have internet problems all the time. We can't do our job well if they have internet problems. We'd like to bring you in, see what you can do to sort that out. I was like, okay, great. They wanted to have a meeting, so I put
Checks out on paper.
Looks good. I put on my favorite blue suit and sort of showed up, and I thought we were gonna go for coffee. It was in the evening. I was like, okay, we'll have a drink, and we ended up going to the random dude's house and the room out the back where they run their IT business. And one of the guys was saying how invested he was in his clients, and I really respected that. The other guy kept telling us about the sweet money he was making, and it was just, for me, I was like, this isn't where I want my business to sort of go. And we went on a bit of journey with them. Were asked to do some work, which we jumped into feet first. We're never really given a scope. Here's the alarm bells. Never really given a scope of work. Never really explained what they wanted start to finish. We're just told money isn't an object. Then when we put our work together, it wasn't good enough. They had all these problems. Their clients angry at them, allegedly. We've paid you. I'm calling the cops. You've ripped us off. And
is that a matter for the police?
No, some people don't really understand how money and finance work.
Yeah, right.
And when you're being yelled at down the phone for allegedly stealing money for genuine work you've done, to pay for hardware that you've paid for, it's really not the right time to give someone a basic lesson in economics and how money can be exchanged for goods and services. But that was the situation we found ourselves in. Yeah. And we were stressed out. My business partner was getting calls all time of the day. I was getting phone calls during my day job, just
by who? These people or their clients?
Yeah, by this particular IT guy.
Right.
It got to be really, really aggressive, and it was just absolute madness. And we were really frazzled. Like, we'd just started our company, and we'd gone through this really horrible experience. Eventually, we came out the other end, financially not well off. We managed to sell a few things back to them that they used, and managed to eventually extract ourselves from this situation. We said, this isn't why we made a company. Like, we made this for personal freedom and financial freedom and to help people, not to just get kicked in the guts.
Yeah.
And I suppose the good that came out of that was we just made a decision that this isn't how we're going to run a business. If this is what it's going to be, then no. Mm-hmm. But that was actually one of the first times we had this conversation, like, should we just stop? Should we just lose all the money we've put into this and just...
That's how much it affected you, those guys.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard on sort of a podcast to sort of give the a full story of how we felt and what happened and the impressions. But then at the end of the day, something terrible happened with another group of people. We felt slighted, made us feel terrible. I'm sure your listeners are going to be able to say they went through the same thing. It makes you question, like, should I do this? Should I go buy some Bitcoin instead? Yes, I should have bought Bitcoin instead. But
right. And so tell me about when the alarm bells started going off, though. Was it when you're walking out to this guy's house and you're going into the back shed or whatever? Like, when did the first
there was a starting point there, and it depends if you want me to go into like the ins and outs of it, but
I want the first one, the first red flag.
Yeah, I'd say hanging out in some guy's shed.
That'll
in
do
this
it.
sort of tiny brick room that's got computers hanging everywhere, and I was like, I mean, I came from a corporate, right? My background is in the insurance industry, and I would work with listed companies and multinationals, and it was very familiar to me to be sitting down to professional meetings to talk about our service offering, and how two businesses could work together and hopefully win their business. And we didn't sit down and really talk about our service offering and how we were compatible. Conversation went anywhere but what we really needed it to.
Okay.
So that was another real warning sign, was where was the focus? What did they really want out of us? Since that wasn't given to us with clarity.
So what did they want out of you then?
That kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah.
We walked away not really knowing.
One thing in those situations I think it can be sometimes is someone to blame.
That certainly happened.
Yeah. Like some people, I reckon I've seen it before, where they will get someone else involved and really all they want is someone to blame. As immature as that is, I think I've seen that a few times before. Because it doesn't really make sense otherwise, does it? Like, why are they getting you there, telling you about how awesome they are in this little room with all this money that they can't pay for an office with, and then not understanding what you do or how you can help?
Yeah, and look, at risk of slander as well, I was working on my postgrad at the time, and this guy who must have been in his later 30s kept telling me how well he was doing in his first year of his bachelor degree in IT, and I couldn't fathom the showing off.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful with showing off, I think. You should let results speak for themselves, and
right.
You gotta weigh up what those results mean. Like I got a 7 in my first year at uni, and I'm in my 30s. Good. Yeah, good. You should be. You're an IT professional. Congratulations.
Right. Very interesting. I mean, I just think it is important to be able to sum up what someone wants from you quickly. That's all. That's something I've learned over time, is what did they want here? Sometimes if you walk away from a situation confused, I always like to ask myself, so what did they want? And trying to come up with a theory around this doesn't make sense, getting to a point where it does make sense. And I hear your story and I think, what did they want?
And look, I'll admit fault from our side. When you're starting and building a business, you might think you know what your business does. But man, we were trying to do everything. My business partner is an incredibly skilled guy, and he would go to the lengths of like setting up smart home devices when we did domestic internet. This is back in the day. We wouldn't do it now. Wouldn't try to flog you a Google Home because it was new and exciting. But like, we should take one of those singing fish. You know those singing fish that go on the wall, and it's like a decoration that goes on the wall. It's like a trout. And then when you walk past it, it'll start flapping and sing, "Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey." Like, what if we like built in a Google Home, and then you could say, "Hey, Google," and the fish would be like, "Hello, how can I help you?" And it's like, that sounds awesome. You're not going to make millions of dollars doing that.
Yeah.
Let's put the insane dreams just on the burner and focus on what we do. And, and we were confused about what our value proposition, our offering really was at the end of the day. We were still figuring that out. And I think that made us vulnerable to walking into those sort of situations.
Sure. And
getting shredded because we didn't know what ground we were standing on.
And they probably didn't know their value prop either. Like, let's be honest.
Yep.
So
I think that's absolutely true.
Your situations where, I say this, and I see this a bit too sometimes, and I'm not saying it happened in this situation, but people will walk into, there's two sets of groups will walk into a situation and they're just hoping for the other person's black book. No, but there's two people wanting it. Like, neither have a black book at this stage, and they walk into this situation hoping for the other person.
Yeah, they've talked really big. Everything will just work out, and I'll be the winner here.
Yeah. But if two people are taking that meeting, usually neither has the black book the other one's looking for. So you did decide to stick with it, though. How did you decide to do that?
Whenever we had dark conversations about the future of our company, even when we sort of got to the point where we raised our voices at each other, which happened, somehow it ended on an optimistic note, because we talk about what sucked and what we weren't happy with. Sometimes we did that really well as mature adults, and sometimes we fell a bit short of it. But when we got to the end, it'd be like, such a shame because of this and this and this. And we'd be like, if we could only just sort of do this and this, then we'd have a really great business. How do we get there? And somehow we always ended... We've sat down and had conversations about how my business partner had enough, and he was out, he was done. And I was like, I can't blame you. But then at the end of the conversation, no, we need to keep building this because it's so full of opportunity. How do we make that happen?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think when you know, you know.
Fair enough.
And yeah, we've just always felt that there was just more to gain.
And how did you work with your business partner? So he's working in it full time and you're working in it, or you're not working in it much. How did that arrangement work? Because I look at that and, from the information I have at the moment, it sounds unfair on him, basically.
You can certainly make an argument both ways, can't you? Sometimes I feel like it's really unfair on him because he's carrying this business on his shoulders. He's in a lot of ways had to build the processes, figure out how to do stuff that was outside his skill set. And kudos to anyone who does that. That's incredibly hard. That's incredibly difficult. But at the same time, you've got someone else who isn't being paid at all.
He was being paid though. He did it. Yeah.
We talked about at the start. He did it off his own back. But the position we're in now, my business partner is full time.
Yeah.
And he's salaried.
Sure.
Not being paid enough. I'll say that on the record. That's out there on the internet now. But being paid for his work. Yeah.
Okay.
And at the start, it was backbreaking for me too. We didn't know what we needed. Like, what do you need to win a client? What documentation do you have to put in front of them? What do you need to impress them with? I remember spending a Christmas holiday making our sales documents that we were allegedly going to hand to our clients to explain what we do, what fixed wireless internet was, and they were going to see that and be really impressed. And I spent, if anyone who's actually sat down and built documentation, you think it's just a few pages. It takes days, it takes weeks to do that stuff well. And my girlfriend at the time said, no, it's fine, you're busy, it's fine. No, it's not just, I'm not just sort of saying that, it's fine. It wasn't fine, It wasn't fine. So who's it fair on and who's it unfair on? All you can do is hope that you're both talking all the time and that you're comfortable with the input from each other. At the same time, sometimes I feel bad because from my corporate life, I have a level of, sales strategy, sales experience. And if I had the capacity to come in and work full time, I could change how we do a lot of these operations. And instead I've had to influence from the outside because I'm not the one doing it. And I'm not telling a team of people how things are done. I have had to have conversations with my business partner and try to steer him in the way that I feel is the right thing to do. That is a challenge in itself because he's lifting all the weights. He's doing all the work. Who am I to come in and tell him, no, you should just do it this way? I don't know. I don't understand the tech like he does. I don't understand the clients like he does.
Very interesting. Okay. And I know early on as well, you were talking about how, off air, you talked about how you won a grant that kept you going.
Oh,
Can you tell us about that?
Thank you, Dan Hopsefell. We're based in Redland City, which is just to the southeast of Brisbane, and just incredibly fortunate that there was an elderly gentleman who had put funds aside to put some grants through to actually grow businesses in the local area. Because normally you see those sort of grants and they're for not-for-profit organisations at the end of the day. And he was wise enough to sort of say, if there's healthy businesses, then there's going to be opportunity for, a healthy community. But you've got to have that backbone first. And we saw this thing was coming up, and I knew that we couldn't just throw something together and just make it work. It's not one of those grants that opens up and you've got 3 hours to complete it before you cut off. And I spent... this is the sort of thing where you sort of say, oh, what does that guy do? He just owns half the business. No, I spent a very long time writing this professional grant as best I could. I ran it through multiple mentors and coaches and people that I looked up to who filtered it, helped me rewrite it, perfect it. And I really used my networks to do the best that I possibly could. And we kind of went through and thought they might give us a couple of dollars, and it was quite significant. They actually said, here's 15,000. Use it as you will, use it wisely. And in hindsight, we could have used it a lot more wisely than we did, but in our growing journey, it was exactly what we needed to keep our heads above water and make good decisions. And can I just say at this point, we should have found ourselves the right business coach when we started. We should have. We summed up the skills that we had accurately. My time in corporate, Rusty, my business partner, his experience, we said, no, we know a lot of stuff. And we really did. And in some ways, I think we were, from the beginning, off to a better start than a lot of people do when they throw businesses together and just haven't lived and experienced business at all. But we would have been fast-tracked if we'd had the right person alongside us. We said we couldn't afford it, and by the time we were really aware that we super needed it, we really actually couldn't afford it.
Right.
By that point.
So when you say the right business coach, did you try some early on and they didn't work out?
Well, the reason I say that is we do have one now,
yeah.
And it has been instrumental to us. And we've talked to a few, and business coaches are business people, and they have their own experience and their own specialty. And when you come in and say, we're a startup telecommunications company that does this, this, and this, you know what? They're not all going to be the right person for you. They're not all going to be the right coach for you. So just like any other product and service, you need to go and have a look and figure out what's the best fit. And sometimes it's going to take some time and energy to figure out who that best fit is. They should be sort of saying to you, here's my CV, here's my experience with businesses like yours. This is why I'm the right fit for you. And when we found, our business coach, we asked him a few questions. We'd met him in the past. He'd done some public speaking. We were impressed with him. We had a really good laugh and conversation with him. We know this is a good fit for us.
Mm-hmm. Did you actually try any others?
No.
Okay.
We didn't spend any money to get their services, but we'd had sit down meetings. A lot of them host different events so they can get their clients in, and they'll give a crash course in Facebook marketing or something like that. I'd encourage people to go along to those and get to know those coaches and figure out what they are like.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you know that you needed one? What made you think that you needed a coach? Because the other thing you think about that, I hear that and I think, well, early on too, you're wanting to put the money elsewhere, right? Like ideally,
yeah.
Which is probably what you're always wanting to do. But especially early on, it's something that would feel like a nice to have for a lot of people.
Using my business networks, we did pick out a number of people who were for want of a better word, kind of coaches, mentors, people we could sit down and talk to about our business. And often they would have really valuable input. It was really the case that over time, we still fell into pitfalls and learned hard lessons. And over time, we realized, if I could talk to myself 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have said, focus things this way, think about things this way, do things this way. And as we had more and more of those experiences, we realized, it would have been really powerful to have the right person alongside us who could have picked up all of those little things. And it was great that we had coaches and mentors who could give us gems and pick up on the odd thing that we were doing wrong. And some of them had similar experience to us. But at the end of the day, we would have done a lot better.
Okay.
We would have done a lot better, I think.
And what do you think? So what cast your mind back to maybe 3 things that a coach would have told you if you had one versus what you actually did?
Oh, if you're talking about when we started?
Yeah, early on, let's say.
Cut the crap. Focus on what your business needs to focus on would be number one.
What's the crap? The building, the shed and the...
Yeah, the point is, if you guys are going to be an internet and phone company, do internet and phones.
Right.
Yeah. Find out what your target market actually wants and needs. Don't be afraid of opportunities. And we found that we were like this. We would spend our energy selling to domestic opportunities. And at the end of the day, if we're honest with ourselves, it's because we were afraid that our product wouldn't work. If we were selling it to some sort of bigger company, how could they say yes to us? How could they do that? How could we possibly compete with big companies, the likes of Optus and Telstra, because they're so good, and it couldn't possibly be the case that we could put this stuff together and do a better job than them. There's no way that could be true. And it took a lot of positive experiences for us to realize, no, that's actually true. We're actually coming in and doing a much better job. We're actually cutting through the crap. We're giving them better prices. We're giving them better services. We're giving them better products. We're afraid of that. I don't know where I was on my 3 points there, but there's a few for you.
No, that's okay. And it just reminds me of when a lot of people will try and sell to startups who have no money. But you have to put it in that category too. They mustn't think that they're good enough for SMEs and whatnot. I mean, we all know startups have got no money, don't we? I mean, if someone doesn't know that, it's like, but people will. There's a lot of people. I've been involved in the scene for a long time. There's a lot of people that will try and sell to it, which doesn't make sense either from a logical point of view.
Look, let me put this in context with something I see in sort of corporate life, and that is there will be a promotion opportunity going, and you talk to people and say, oh, you must be sort of ready for that. Have you put your name in the hat? Oh, I'm not quite ready yet. Oh, I'm not sort of 100%. I'm not sure if I could do the job as well as kind of I could. Oh, yeah, it's maybe the next one. And you say, oh, but that ship is like sailing by. But, won't you sort of learn it on the job and sort of get it right? Oh, yeah, maybe... Oh, just maybe next time. Nathan, you don't really know me as well as you should. And
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the same thing. If you apply for a job and you get the job, you're trusting that employer knows what they're looking for and that you can do the job and meet the need. And it should be the same. And you know what? If your product isn't good enough, they should say no.
Yes.
And it really should be that simple. So why not spend your energy focusing on that bigger opportunity, that better client, someone who's better to your target market, and let them say no if they're going to say no.
Sure. And you know what the interesting thing is? Often they're the ones who'll appreciate it. Like the smaller people might not appreciate it because they don't really value what you do. Like you'll make a big difference to the bigger business, right?
Rather than got someone's more room to make an impact.
Yeah, rather than someone's home with the trout on the wall.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so it's interesting that you would have got a coach early on in your journey. Okay, cool. All right, I want to hear about when you had a crazy client.
Oh, that one. This is what I mean about you learn the lessons along the way, and that there are people out there who will use all their efforts to misconstrue what you've put in front of them to their own benefit. In this particular case, we had done some work for some people. They'd parted ways, and one had taken our services with him, and the other, she said, oh, it would be great if I could sort of get that same thing at my house, because I know that's what I need. And I need all this other stuff. I'd love to get a new computer. I'd love to do this, love to do that. In sort of where we are in our business journey, it's a few $1,000s, and it's probably not a massive thing, but at the time it was like, yeah, Nathan's put all his money into this business and his credit card is nearly maxed out. And yes, we're going to go take every opportunity we possibly can. So for us, we're like, this is great. Like a couple of days work. We had 2 guys up on the roof installing special 4G antennas, set up a computer for you. Oh, you need a new monitor. We're going to get you top of the range gaming monitor. Oh, you really want that? Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we'll bill you for that too. You need our internet services? Awesome. Yeah, we'll just tack that on, put that through later. And once we got to the end, okay, here's your bill. No. I never agreed to that. What do you mean I have to pay extra for a computer monitor? And like, we're talking days of work, thousands of dollars of hardware. We couldn't afford to just be out of pocket. She was fighting with us by email constantly. There was some very strange requests, like to my business partner. He kept getting asked for him to bring his silent partner to her house to discuss. And I was like, that's weird. 1, I'm not a silent partner. 2, what is she talking about? 3, I'm not going to this lady's house. That's insane.
Yeah.
And then she called in her friend who was a lawyer, which would scare a lot of people. I wasn't too scared of that. Yeah, take us to QCAT. We'll probably get the money because, but I think he might have had a little bit of sense, because they ended up amicably handing most of our hardware back.
Okay.
Less a few $1,000s worth of equipment.
Right.
And you sort of say these stories on a podcast, doesn't sound like much, but you're literally talking weeks of stress. And when you're running your own business and you're already like hanging on for dear life and your skin is thin because you're stressed out, those sort of things can kill your business. They're going to give you a proper mental breakdown. The lessons we took away from that were pretty arbitrary. Got to be clearer in how we do quotes. Our process needs to be better. We need to spell everything out more clearly. You have to get sign up every step. Those sort of things. But again, it's the psychology. A bad experience can break you.
Especially one that drags on.
Especially one that drags on. And at this time, we were paying 2 salaries with money we didn't have because we were so optimistic that things would go well. We'd had a couple of good months and we were banking on... We'd won like a really big client for the scale that we're still at. It was a very big client. And we just weren't tracking our finances well enough. And we thought, well, we've got this big client. Optimistically, we're going to keep moving forward very, very well. And that wasn't the case. And we ended up in a bit of a black hole. And so to have that, it's like those guys could have been out selling. They could have been out doing jobs and actually earning money. But instead, this one person has held my company up.
Did she end up paying?
She ended up paying us for a computer or something.
Right.
And we ended up taking all the rest back.
Wow.
But in our industry too, like, we pay suppliers for the internet data she used, and there was a lot of other expenses, not even counting salaries and stuff that we had to come up with.
Yeah.
Or rather, I had to come up with.
Yeah.
So, as the only breadwinning sort of owner of the business, that money had to come from somewhere. It was my pockets.
Yeah. And it can be one experience, right, that can derail a whole lot, because we're probably talking, if you add up everything, this could be, tens of thousands of dollars of, if especially
opportunity cost.
Yeah, would have been enormous. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Plus actual dollars.
And plus actual dollars. That's right.
Yeah, right. Okay. Keep telling me stories, because I know that you've had a supplier hold you to ransom as well.
Yeah. In our industry, we purchase... Well, let me go back a little bit. When we're dealing with fixed wireless internet, it's just like your phone. It's often just like your phone. You purchase data plans, and you have those limits that apply for the month. And the same with us. So even though we're in a more of a wholesaler position, we have to buy data, which we on-sell to our clients. And that is a science in itself of making sure that we've got an appropriately sized pool against what's actually being used. We're billing the right amount. We would have nightmares with suppliers like Optus and Telstra not giving us the actual usage data, and then getting stung with extra fees. Actual nightmare. Real nightmare. My business partner over the course, and props to Rusty, taught himself how to code in Python as we went along so that he could build some software to actually handle some of these problems. These are things you don't think about when you start a business, that you're going to have to go to that sort of nth degree to solve something that should be rudimentary in the 21st century. But, that's where we found ourselves. And one particular supplier had continuously overbilled us just through the nose, $15,000. They had charged us in stuff that wasn't correct, and all sorts of excess fees and charges that weren't correct. And so we put a hand up and said, we're not paying these. You guys need to get everything together, bill us properly. We're not paying these. We didn't incur that. And unbeknownst to our client relationship manager at this business, their billing department decided on a Friday. I had been working late. I remember it being really dark, and I was walking a few bus stops back from the CBD because I'd worked so long I needed to stretch my legs. And I get a phone call saying this supplier have randomly cut off some of our clients from just having internet. Just at the drop of a hat, they said, no, you need to pay your bills or else. And literally held us to ransom. It was, what should we do? Make the decision, Nathan. What should we do? And I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. I've just finished my day at my job. I don't really know what's going on. I've got to make a decision about what we do. Terrific. And ultimately, we had to pay a ransom.
Wow.
I think in the end, we didn't pay for all the extra stuff that they had claimed that we did. We weren't out of pocket that complete amount. But we still had to find that money in the moment. And just once again, that's the moment where you could just walk away and go, this sucks.
Yeah.
This sucks, man. Why would I work in this industry and do this? I could just be working for the man, taking home my monthly pay packet. I don't need this stress in my life.
And so what did you do with the supplier after you paid their ransom?
I hate to say that it had it in a way, like, you want these to be like stories of great revenge. Like, you want this to be the end of Gladiator, where the emperor gets killed and everyone cheers and moves on with their lives. We played nice with our relationship manager there, and things did get sorted out. We do continue to use them.
Right.
Month to month, we still check the invoices they send us, and every single month we have to contest overcharges, issues, things we didn't put on there, mystery bills.
Oh my God.
But my question is, how many people in our industry, how many businesses in my industry be they like us, managed service providers, or be they just big companies that just have big accounts with these guys, are just getting ripped off and paying bills for things that they haven't used, and are just paying them because it looks right. That's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary. And they are getting away with it.
So why not use someone else?
Do you remember how earlier on I said we didn't trust ourselves as being better and more capable than the other companies out there?
Yeah.
It's a disaster, mate.
Right.
It is a disaster. One thing we pride ourselves on, and just a bit of a spin for Switchnode, in a sense, we're almost like a broker of telecommunications. Not that when you're going out to clients and making a sell, that's what they want to hear. But what we pride ourselves on is we can have a look at how your business is running and say, oh, you need NBN. Oh, actually, you need a backup. Oh, best in your area, you need fixed wireless, 4G, 5G, Optus, Vodafone, Telstra. And so we need to have the right capabilities. And so that means for us, we deal with a number of different service providers and have these sort of headaches over and over again in different places.
So you're saying that you can't use someone else?
For where we are at the moment, it's the best fit that's available.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the certain services that we wholesale from them. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I understand you haven't just dealt with businesses, though. You tried to move into elevators as well at some stage.
Oh yeah, great. Let's bring everything up.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the people on the other end of my stories have different views on things, but we were asked to build a custom product hardware for elevators, and the purpose of that was, okay, so back in the day, that's the 1990s, you'd have a blackout and your phone could still ring. That's because you were using copper cable that had its own power run through it. That could power your phone, your analog phone, so you could still pick up the phone and have a chat even though you've got a candle, you know. Today, when you're using fiber optics, if you've got a blackout, that digital communication can't happen. So if you're in a lift, in a building, in an elevator, and the power goes out, how do you make the emergency call to say, hey, I need some help? So we realized there was a bit of a synergy and a need in this industry. Came in, started developing a product. Admittedly, took a very long time. We took too long. But we found solutions for that industry that were more cost effective than what had been happening, better service, just basically did better than what their offer was. And we were very, very optimistic, like we could own this market. We could be the internet elevator guys. This is what we could do. And then one day we got shopped and they went straight to our service provider, our wholesaler, and just said, oh, even though these guys have come in and done a way better job, could we get even better just directly through you? And of course that wholesaler said yes. And we got an email one day saying, yeah, can you cancel all these services for us? And we went, oh, that's a significant part of our monthly income and it's gone.
Right.
And what do you do? What can you do? That's not how I would choose to do business with my service partners, but it's what can happen to you.
Right. Okay. And then there it goes.
And there it goes.
Wow. What was that like, getting that email? I assume it was an email.
Yeah, I think you can imagine what that was like.
Yeah,
It was all kinds of emotions. What's going on? Let's try to figure it out. You kind of hope for, you'd hope that in a situation like that, you'd at least get a nice phone call explaining, I'm so sorry, business imperatives, we've made this decision. You'd have an opportunity to, counter, have a counterpoint, say, these are the services you're missing out. This is your risk profile has changed. You've got governance issues as a result of this. You might want to discuss this with you. You'd hope to have that sort of return, but sometimes it just is gone and it vanishes into thin air.
Right.
You don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Wow.
And all our optimism for the burgeoning elevator industry was gone.
Yeah.
But the question we ask ourselves is, should we have stayed focused on what we do really, really well, which is phones and internet for businesses?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? We probably should have. We probably didn't have the capacity to go building new hardware and finding new solutions for an industry that we at the time didn't really have the expertise and capacity. And it's easy to say that because, I mean, opportunity is opportunity. How many people walk away from something like that is gold? I suppose the challenge is figuring out in the moment whether it's the right thread to pull on or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
It brings up the way that I usually deal with my clients is as a growth strategist. Ironically, most of the things I tell people to do is say no. Here's an opportunity pops up. No, don't do it. Here's the thing pops up. No, don't do it. Stick to what you're good at. Understand what you're good at. Stick to it. So for me, when I work with people, this is not... When you tell me that, that's not surprising. It's not surprising that you tried something else and then it didn't quite work out. That's pretty common.
Well, look, I'm going to flip the tables here because I need to ask you a couple of questions.
Okay.
I've seized the reins of power over this podcast. If you have a startup, the advice that is always given, top to bottom, this infuriates me, Jack, is to listen to your market and find out what they want, find out what they need. Like, great advice. That, like, on the surface, that's great advice. When you're just starting up and you don't have clients because you're just starting up, and the clients that you have might not be representative of what your target industry is, how can you listen to them and understand what they want and what they need and figure out who your target market is?
That's why I'm a growth strategist, not a startup strategist.
Right. I thought you were saying I might have to pay to get the answer to that question.
No. So, but I thought you were painting a scenario where you already had clients, and this was distracting to what you were doing.
Yes, I'm shooting from the hip here and asking this question because.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
I remember
don't know
being told all the time,
Yeah.
like, just pay attention to what your clients want and need, and it was like, I don't have enough of them.
Yeah. Yes, because you don't have enough for it to be an actual scientific. What do you call it? There's not enough. The sample size is too small for you to draw any meaningful conclusions from it because you don't know if they're outliers or not.
There are points where the golden advice, is fool's gold. That sounds like I'm trying to be really smart or something. But there's points where this golden advice isn't worth anything to you. You're not of scale to actually use that.
Yes. Totally agree with that. I think when you said before, though, about throwing the spaghetti against the wall, there's no getting around that. So what you did as well isn't necessarily a waste in my eyes because you know now.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I have to confess, I wish that we had found ways to get through that journey faster.
Faster, yeah.
Because we sit in this point now, we go, awesome. Like, we know our product works.
Mm-hmm.
We know our service is the level that it needs to be.
Yeah.
We've got an understanding of who our target markets are. We're poised to grow and deliver.
Yes.
And it's amazing to be at that point where you've gone through that journey and thrown enough spaghetti that you know where you need to be. But I wish that if we'd got there a year sooner, that's a year of opportunity cost, of actual expenditure, of salaries, of learnings, of all different things where we could be that much further ahead.
Yes. Yeah. The way I think about it though, like, as much as this is sort of my expertise, is doing that sort of stuff and working out what a client gets out of business, what the value is, where they should position themselves, where they should price themselves, blah, blah, blah. I've got a science background, for Christ's sake, and there's so much unknown. still at that stage, and I'm upfront with people about if I don't know. And it's sometimes for me, it's more about the method, as you said before, of reducing the length of that learning process, rather than it is about thinking that process isn't going to happen. I don't know how to get around it, but you can certainly, I think you can shrink it.
Yeah, amazing piece of advice I was given was just call a client who's, in your target range. Just say, what's a cool way I could have introduced myself?
Yeah, right.
And
what did they say?
In our case, the feedback was your industry sets a very low bar. So it wasn't very hard for you to beat.
Yeah, sure.
And they said, but the thing is that you were easier to talk to. And we were like, oh, that's pretty cool. And we told our business coach, and the bloke nearly jumped out of his chair. He said, you've got just the best tagline ever. Switchnode, easier to talk to. He said, could you imagine if some of the big telcos took that on board? It wouldn't be true, but what a tagline to market with. And we were like, oh yeah, actually that is pretty good. This is our messaging. This is our messaging. It's not, we can broker so many products and
yes.
Better to no, we're easy to talk to. We're here for your service. We'll get it right.
Yeah, we'll fix your internet.
That's the sell.
Yes.
I don't need to talk to you till your eyes go blurry and you're not listening to me anymore.
Of course. Very cool. And we've painted throughout this. We've painted a little bit of a dark picture, I guess, of the business journey. But it is good to hear the real stories. Do you look back on it so far and go, this has been a great experience?
Yeah. And you mentioned that we won that grant, for example. We also won 2019 Best Startup Redland City Council.
Well done.
Look, if you get an opportunity like that, just like glory in it. I just remember thinking, it's not every single day I'm going to get business people stand up on a stage and talk about how great a job I've done and how good I am. So let's soak this in, enjoy it, get the photos, have that big smile on my face, and live in that moment, because this is the reward, right? This is when you talk about, I started my business because I can build it the way I want. I can make something that I want. When you have those mountain peak moments, don't just let them slip by.
Very good. And I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but it just reminds me of what I said to someone last night. And he was sort of thinking about starting a business, but he didn't know whether he should or not. And he was asking me, another guy who's a business owner, what they think's important. One of my things I said, you got to be naive. Because if he knew what it was like.
That challenges me on a personal level, Jack.
No, I'm not saying you were naive, but
you're right, though.
But if you listen to this, and maybe I'm ruining potential business owners through this podcast by being so honest, but there is something about being naive at the start that will get you started. And then once you're in it, you're like, oh, well, I'm in it now. I'll plow through. Yeah.
It's easier when you start to see that big horizon picture, that big, bright, beautiful world. And we found that as we went forwards, it was easy for that view to get smaller and smaller and to be caught in just the drudgery of moving on. You're right, this has got really dark, hasn't it? But and this is the reason I did talk about the business coaches. It's been a fairly recent thing for us where we've had our perspective changed. We've been challenged in a really, really good way to say, boys, what you're sitting on is actually amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, take a step back, see how I see it. Mm-hmm. This is what you can do. The world is your oyster.
Yeah. And
we were so just caught in our own heads and not seeing it. Yeah, if you can hang on to that beautiful naivety from the very start and live that, man, that's when you can do well.
Yeah.
Don't let that go. Hold on to hope, guys.
Yeah, nice. No, I really like like that idea, and sometimes to the point where I mean, I was speaking to someone recently, and they didn't know how to grow and all this stuff, and I literally said, "Here's all the people." We looked at all the people that he knows, and I said, "Why don't you just get in touch with them all and see if they're interested?" People he knows in his network, blah blah blah. 10 meetings lined up within a couple of days. We don't know what we have sometimes.
We don't know what we have sometimes. I like that a lot. It's incredibly true. We have opportunities at arm's reach, and we can't see the potential that's right in front of us.
Yes. And there is a few people, and I think because I'm like this too, but that will, out of the 10 steps, they'll take 9, and they just need to take that one extra step, and that's all you need to do.
Spot on.
And I mean, as you know, like I used to run a event series and all this type of thing, and I did so much work, got all these people together, but I just didn't quite tell people what I did, and I didn't have a product or something to push or sell. So I did 9 out of the 10 steps really all the time, reasonably well, not necessarily amazing, but well enough, and I just tripped at the finish line all the time. And there's some business owners I come across, and maybe that's why I work with them, because they've got a similar personality. It's just, sometimes you just need to take one more step.
I can relate to that so perfectly. It's really easy to have that checklist of things that you need to do. Marketing, check. Copy, check. Sales strategy, check. Good shed, check. But just not invest to that 100% where you deep down you know what it needs to be.
Yes. Yeah. And you ignore it and just go about your day and do a few reactive tasks and a few
and
things.
you're one step away. It's that close.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that we both have a similar way of operating, it sounds, to an extent, with this type of mindset. And I look at here at what you wrote about how you described yourself as a teenager, and you said you put on a brave face, but you weren't someone who was brave.
I was terrified of the universe, yeah.
Right. So does any of that come from there, do you think?
Ooh. When people give advice, often they just give advice around their own journey. And it's a situation like, if you're an extrovert, let me tell you straight up, the advice is probably going to be, listen more. And if you're an introvert, the advice is probably going to be, open your mouth and speak more. Whoa. For me and my journey, the point of that is that you need to discover what you're like and who you are to make positive changes. For me, I'm a somewhat outspoken. My undergraduate degree was in English literature and linguistics. Like, communication is something that I've been very natural to, and I'm a musician by trade. I've spent time on stages with a guitar in my hands and singing, and my own sort of assumption of myself was I was this extrovert and never really fit. And it wasn't until I sort of appreciated myself, Nathan, you're actually an introvert. It should be really obvious. You're just sort of close to the line. Things like that became really clear. My challenge that I have every day personally is taking that 10th step. When I step up and I confront challenges, and more often than not, things go really, really well. The point for me is trepidation and fear about getting started. And it may be the same when you were talking about someone who had these opportunities in their network, because it's really scary to pick up the phone, or at least I think so. Often, it might be that you watch me and I pick up the phone, you're like, Nathan's really practiced at this, he's really good. So it can be really scary for me just to make that decision. I'm going to pick up the phone and call someone and say, it's been a while since I talked to you, like, how's your business going?
Yeah.
Phone and internet. I'd say that's a character trait that's always been there. And you can go on and say, I was bullied at school and stuff, and that wasn't fun. And I think senses of inferiority and insecurity and those sort of things, they do stick with you.
And that's why you try and go on stage and kind of blast it out in a big way at times.
Sometimes that could be a safer environment than you think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a performance, right?
Yeah.
It's not you.
And if I know all my parts and my chords, and I know it's gonna sound good, and I know the response from the audience is gonna be positive.
Mm-hmm.
And worst case scenario, I busk and no one listens to me, and like that's the actual worst outcome.
Yeah.
It might seem like you're being incredibly brave, but not necessarily.
Counterintuitively, it's kind of a controlled environment.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly can be.
So, because I'm the same, I can perform to whatever. I don't care. I can get up and talk, and I'm prepared. It's all good. It's fine. I'm okay one-on-one with people too, but where I struggle is sort of 1 to like 6 or 1 to 5. If you have like a small group and it's, it's in that situation, like honestly, give me 1 to 200 any day of the week where I'm on stage talking, as opposed to at a bar and there's like 5 people. And
it's funny that we can work this way, but
yeah,
it's actually incredibly normal, I think. And before you go on stage with a really big group, your heart's racing. You have to nervous pee 100 times.
Yep.
But as you say, you get out there, you can't see people because there's so many, and you stick to your script.
Yep.
It can be sort of a safer environment than the people watching you think.
Yes. Yeah. There's no script when you're in that, talking to 3 or 4 people in a group. There's no script.
Can I tell you another story? We were invited to be one of the first speakers at, I think it was called Startup Redlands. Really nice idea. It was a bit of a pitch night, mostly fun at a local pub in Cleveland, and they would have a couple of judges, and they'd give out might be $500 to the best sort of business pitch of the night, which was really, really, really nice idea. And we were literally just asked, would you like to be the first to pitch at this whole thing and kick it off? We weren't asking for their investment money because they were potentially there as angels. But we said, yeah, we'll do it. It should be fun. Like, we enjoy just getting up in front of people, stretch our legs, practice our pitch. Got to go for 15 minutes. So we had a bit to talk about around internet and state of the market and singing fish, just keep people entertained for 15 minutes. And we walked in, and the guy says to me, it's great news. We've actually got a special guest presenter, judge tonight. And my heart sank because I knew what he was going to say next. And he said, it's Steve Baxter from Shark Tank. And I went, this is going to be really, great, awesome. And so we did our 15-minute thing, and everyone, I told a few jokes. People laughed. I pointed out there was like a video store in Capalaba, like on the way there, and everyone was like, oh, that's so true, internet sucks. Yeah. And Steve Baxter just took the opportunity to shred us to pieces in front of everyone. And it was kind of like on The Office, where Michael Scott says something wrong, and you watch every single other person in the room just react and be completely appalled and sort of say, no, this isn't what we're here for. This isn't how it works. And suffice it to say, after hours, I think he realised that it was a little bit more fun in games. And then he pulled us aside and told us that we needed to build phone towers, and that's what our business should be.
Right.
I had to admit some of his feedback was correct.
Yeah.
But there was no way we were taking it when it was
right.
framed incredibly aggressively.
Right. No good.
Yeah, some of the adventures you have as a business owner, you don't even think, finish my day of insurance to go and get shredded by Steve Baxter publicly.
And do you look at stuff like that as character building? Or do you, because some people can look at it different ways, right? Okay, I can look back on that. It built character. I didn't like it, but it has made me better in some ways. And other people are just like, it was horrible.
Oh, look, it's a fun story to tell when you're sitting on a podcast, just dropping anecdotes.
Yeah.
It's good when you can do something like that with your business partner and you are in it together, and those hits don't hurt so much. Yeah, I didn't take offense, but I knew when I heard that name, I knew what I was in for.
Yeah.
Just quietly.
Yeah, right. Very interesting. Okay. Any final words of advice for maybe up and coming business owners, small business owners that are listening to this? I've heard your story. Thanks for being so open with what's happened. This is what I like to do. I want to tell real stories, real anecdotes from things that have actually happened, and I guess normalize it a little bit. But what would you say as some parting words?
I was a bit afraid to start a business because I was working full-time at a corporate, and I thought this is a real conflict of interest, and they'll be unhappy with me, and spending my time splitting it across doing this stuff. I could just see all these problems. I'm a risk-averse person. I work in insurance. Like, this is how it goes.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much I learned and have grown because I've had my own business. The challenges I've gone through have really shaped my thinking as a business leader. I was doing a postgraduate degree at the same time, just a graduate certificate in commerce. So basically like the start of a commerce degree. Tell you what, it's got nothing on owning your own business. The stuff you learn from just having to get it done, having to think creatively, do your thing, stretch yourself, put yourself in positions that aren't your expertise and grow. Man, there's nothing like it. Absolutely nothing like it. And I couldn't believe how having a side hustle was so positively influential, like on both of my jobs, if I can call them that. So I've intentionally sort of gone out of my way today to point out some negative experiences, because I personally think that stuff doesn't get shared.
Yes.
People go through their careers and you don't want to hear, I did an accounting degree and it was pretty good and yada, yada, yada. I'm the CEO of, this really big company. And you go, what about the stuff in between? That's what I want to know, like when you were like struggling at night to make a decision and like having to talk it through with your wife. How do you make those calls? Like, that's what people go through and actually want to know. So I've really wanted to sort of share some rougher experiences today. But I tell you what, so incredibly rewarding. So rewarding. Take on crazy challenges. Push yourself. This is how we grow as people and have experiences, great experiences while we're on this planet. Just do it. Don't get old and regret saying, I wish I'd done some more cool stuff. Just give it a go.
And if you say, you're talking about the personal growth that you had there, if you're comparing that to, say, the previous, you've been in business for 3 years, previous, let's say 27 odd years you've had before that, can you really look at that and say the growth in those 3 years was just, eclipsed the other 27 tenfold?
In very different ways.
Right.
Yeah. Running a business and making those decisions, I feel like it trained me in sort of what you would consider like more senior business decision making. You've got to make hard calls. When you start off in a corporate and you're learning admin and your field and everything, you're learning in a really different way. But yeah, for me it was bigger thinking and applying my creativity and my acumen for my strengths and growing in places where I'd never grown before. So I'd actually say not really like for like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what would you look at then that you can do, say now, today, over the last month, the last couple of months, there's no way in hell you could have done 3 years ago?
All of it.
I'm not just talking about in business, just in general, because you've grown as a person, right, so much in that time. So what's something that happens now that just 3 years ago that just wouldn't even be on your radar?
We've talked a lot about hard and soft skills without calling them that, but I think the deep confidence to say, to sum up, this is the situation we find ourselves in, and this is the steps that we need to take next. And, in my day job, I'm dealing with some pretty senior people. Sometimes I have to put forward some big thinking, which is really scary when you're talking to people that have done their job for decades and say, I believe this is the sales strategy that we've got to take, or whatever. And I think that's some of the big things that owning a business has given me.
And you can do that now. And
I can do that, yep. Absolutely.
And do you do that almost without fear now, or you still have a bit of fear around it?
That's a process in itself. That's something that I've been learning and training myself to do. And just like everything else, you have to do it and acknowledge that you've done a good job when you do a good job. And so that when you face that problem the next time, you can step back with some confidence and say, no, this worked out last time. Like I can trust myself.
Mm-hmm. So there is still some fear.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's something that is like a part of my character. I think I'll be, a business person in my 60s and my 70s, and I'm probably still going to be afraid of dealing with some stuff.
Right.
What I've had to train myself to do is look past that and operate in it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, not awesome, but awesome for sharing what you've shared. So we might leave it there for today, but thanks for being so open and about everything that's happened. I'm sure people will get a lot out of your story, your business story, and what it's meant for you. If people wanted to get in touch or they wanted to find out a bit more about Switchnode, where should they go?
If you go to switchnode.com.au, you may just find a webpage there with our details. As for me, if you were interested in this, you want to have a chat, why not reach out to me on LinkedIn? But I tell you what, if you're going to do that, just add a little bit of a cover message and tell me why. Because if you're just some random person who just adds me for no reason, probably say no.
There's a bit of that on LinkedIn.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, awesome. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. It has been a delight.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Remember to subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.